All right, Mark, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Yes, I think I think I got you in there. So let's see. Hey, Mark, how are you?
Hello.
I can hear you. This is a good
Oh,
start.
that's,
Thanks so
yeah,
much for coming on.
I can hear you just fine.
Excellent,
Um,
excellent. Yeah, the picture looks good. I've been doing, this is the second time I've used the Zoom meeting. I've used Zoom a lot, but they have a professional setting where you can stream live to Facebook.
mm.
Where I wanted to
Oh,
have.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I didn't either up until recently. But the one downside to Facebook Live is when you want to converse with others and have a nice fun thing is the invite is really only on the phone, at which point you're then trying to position the phone and work the phone. And it was, and I love Zoom. So I said, well, what's Zoom doing with this? And yeah,
Mm.
it's not bad. But how are you doing? I know this is we're a couple minutes early, which is great. So I don't want to get into the nitty gritty just yet, but I'm glad to see you, and I want to thank you so much for coming on,
Oh, no
taking some
problem.
time out of your day. Yeah. Um, let's see if I can. I'd like to split the screen evenly, which would be nice. Oh, all right, there we go. So, all right, perfect. Well, since you're on early, do you recognize the background behind me?
Uh, that's an older Dune cover, if I'm not mistaken.
100%, 100%. This is the first edition Dune cover that went on for quite a while. So, a little homage to you. It looks very abstract up close.
Mm.
I've had some calls on Zoom where I put this on, and they most people have no idea what this is, so they were just like, what is going on? I'm like, you gotta go hide in the seats, make sure the sandworm doesn't get you, and you know but but no, this is great. This is great. I'm going to try to top off here. So it's the perfect time. So I know you're 6 hours ahead of me. So this is 10 a.m. for me. I was able to get some breakfast in.
Yeah,
Get
all
some
good.
coffee.
It's basically the end of my workday, sort of. So,
Excellent, excellent. Um, let's see, let's see. Again, I've got I've got a number of fun things here to talk about. I just want to give everybody a chance to kind of
mm.
get in on the stream. Um, but so, I'm looking at some comments here from the page live, and the people are saying I can see the spice in the picture. Save the spice. um, I was just saying to everyone, I said, the only caveat to this book, which granted it's a miracle that well, not a miracle, but it was fantastic that Centipede Press went and spoke to the Herbert family and got everyone involved, and got his facsimile signature on there, and but the only downside is that it's limited to 750. But I wanted everyone to go, and they can check out the art. They can check out your art, because your art has become to me, it's very much like I imagined the book, which
Oh,
is
that's great to hear.
oh man, it really is. You capture the specific scene so well, you capture the characters so well. And I've seen a lot of art for Dune. I'm a Dune nut, so I have not said that before. I have not said that before. I have not seen this before. There's a couple of books where things look as you imagine it. Michael Whalen with the Dark Tower series, the Stephen King Dark Tower series. That was kind of, that's like, this is very much how I imagined it. And the art you did for this is just incredible. I love all of your art that I've checked out. It's just great. So I
Oh,
highly,
thank you.
highly recommend everybody to go check it out. You know, if you couldn't get this book, you may try and get it later on, but definitely check out the art. Um, we're about 4 minutes to the official live, at which point I'll.
And how are you getting on with the cases? Have you already started working on them or?
So yeah, no, that's a great question. So there's a lot of prep. There's a lot of prep, right? And you know, thankfully, you know, you talking to me over this period of time has been very helpful. And um, so I did bring a sample here, which I waited to show you. Now, granted, this is a very rough cut, right? So I did an engraving. The sandworm itself
Mm,
is good, but it's far too deep of an engraving, so you lose a little bit of detail on there. So I'm just going to say
mm,
that right from the upfront. But what I really wanted to do is capture the scene so that I could play with the paint, because I paint um, acrylics on top of the wood, and I
mm.
do that by hand. And um, I loved your mock-ups very much, and then I said, let me actually just try like a straight gold for the moons, you know. So this is
Mm-hmm.
let me get this in here where I'm not messing this up. Almost got it. Sorry, I'm playing with this 4K camera. There we go.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So
Nice.
it's coming along. It's coming along. I have some smaller images that wouldn't even show up on the screen. Oh man. See, I have this nice 4K camera so that I'm actually looking at you and not doing it from the computer. But
Yeah, it's just because of the background. It's like,
there we go. All right, that's better.
oh yeah.
So, and the gold is a little bit brighter in person, and
Hmm.
you know, it's just that's, you know, that's just a straight gold acrylic, right? So I just thought it looked perfectly on that. And I, you know, now I really have to you know, I'm going to do a full mock-up of the night on Arrakis. And there's a lot of people that um got involved in the process. You know, they got a case and they're like, oh man, the day on Arrakis, all right, let's do that. And then I get a message like a day later and they're like, oh, the night on Arrakis looks so good, let's do that. So I'm gonna have mock-ups for everybody, and this, you know, not mock-ups, I'm gonna have nice, you know, really good looking tests. You know, that's just like, this is what it's gonna look like. You know, this is what the art on the case is gonna look like,
Hmm.
and by all means, you know, then choose. But yeah, thank you for asking. It's really an honor and a privilege to be able to, you know, do this, and I greatly you know, I greatly appreciate you working with me on this. And
Oh, come on.
you know, it's you know, that's it's there's two things that, you know, my two big passions are writing, and I will be a bestseller at some point before I die. That's my goal, right? I don't want to
Nice.
be Edgar Allan Poe in the ground when it happens. Um,
What do you write? Like sci-fi novels, or
yeah, my specialty is
okay.
sci-fi. I've written over a dozen books. They were almost, my first book was fantasy. It was terrible. I wrote it when I was 19 years old. It was awful. So I just found like one of the first manuscripts like this thick printed out, because you'd want to do that and mail it to yourself, the copyright. There's all the things you don't realize when you're young. You know. But yeah, I had one book picked up by a major publisher. You may have heard of, actually, in Europe, called Lantia, and I was actually their
Mm,
first U.S. release. They're out of Spain, but they also have in the States, they have a Los Angeles headquarters because they work with Netflix, and they have I think a Fort Worth headquarters. But yeah, so I do love to do, you know, that's what I work on all the time. I read and write, and I've been in journalism for about you know, 18 years, but it's almost always been
mm,
covering pop culture, and
right.
then gadgets and robotics. You know, so that was heavy in
Okay.
my book. You know, my book is called the book that was published in 2015 is called Cyber War, and but it's not a technical book. It's basically a straight thriller with a noir feel that is science fiction, you know, and slightly dystopian in the near future from now. So
Nice.
Yeah, I've got a new one I just finished that's totally different, but also heavily sci-fi, heavy sci-fi, and I'm going to be trying to pitch that to some of the major publishers.
Well, if you ever need a cover, just feel free to hit me up, and then we can work something out.
I would love to do that. Absolutely would love to do that. It's 10:01. We got everybody in here, I think, that should be in here. So all the latecomers, here is Mark Molnar, the artist of the Centipede Press Dune, as well as so many other great works of art that he's done for various publications. And just, I greatly encourage you to check out his own art in general. I mean, as a fine artist, he's brilliant. My mom's a fine artist. I always had it in the family, so to speak. And then I have a number of close friends that are very, very good artists, and in their own right, and they're able to do it for a living. And is that a point you've gotten to, where you can do this for your as a make a living doing this? Doing art full time, I mean, or
Well, I wouldn't call myself a fine artist. I'm more an illustrator and concept artist. So I'm mainly working for movies and games and animation, and beside my illustration work, what I've been doing for publishers. So yeah, I worked on a lot of different stuff regarding illustrations, like Star Wars, Game of Thrones stuff, a lot of Warhammer illustrations.
I was just gonna ask about that, yeah, because I saw a couple and I got really excited.
Yeah, and things like that. But that's sort of my personal side of work, and beside that, I'm doing more like production art, so like pre-production illustrations and concept art for various movies and games and stuff. And I worked as a freelancer, and also worked as a concept artist in-house at game companies and in movies. And then about 5 or 6 years ago, I moved back to Hungary, where I'm originally from, after living in New Zealand and a bit in the States and in the UK. And then I started my own company, where we are basically it's a digital art and concept art outsource studio, and where we work with various clients from Netflix to HBO and Apple TV, Amazon, and all sorts of
Oh man, that's
names.
fantastic. Everybody, go and check this out. Go and check all of this out. There's sometimes there's things where I'm like, I've seen this. I have some of these 40K books, and then a lot of those there's 40K Warhammer. There's Warhammer film. There's all sorts of media related to Warhammer, and that's kind of, it's the science fiction side of Dungeons and Dragons, if you're not familiar. And Dune, I think, is a big influence on it. I think because it's been around a long time.
Actually, I was also working together with Wizards of the Coast. So I was art directing the last 3 or 4 trailers what came out.
Very cool. That's wild.
So,
oh man, that's wild. All right. I mean, the first real question I have for you, which is oh, actually, you know what? Before I forget, because I'm looking at a bevy of comments here, and we have discussed this, and so I'd like to, if you can elaborate as much as you want to or not, but there's a lot of people clamoring here to ask if you're going to be doing prints of the Dune works of art, if they'll be limited, open prints, but
yeah, that's those are in progress. I mean, I prepared the prints, and my plan is to release prints. I'm waiting for approval from Jared from Centipede Press. Sure. Because he was basically asking, let's wait until all the books get shipped, and he also has to sort out some stuff with the copyright owners. I'm not sure it's the Dune estate or or what, but he was basically just asking a bit more time for me. So I'm waiting for his approval to sell prints and remarks for the books. My plan is to actually release a limited run of prints. So probably there will be one run from the interior illustration, what can be built like piece by piece, and I'm also planning to do a limited run pack from the portraits what I've done for the book.
That's
And that's going to be like 10 prints, and all of them will be signed, of course, and probably limited to 25 copies.
Oh wow, very cool. I know you just made a lot of people happy.
And actually, so 25 copies each, but I'm planning to release them in 3 sizes. It's going to be A4, A3, and A2, and all 3 like limited to 25 copies.
That's awesome. Very,
So
very.
I hope it can happen. It can happen, and I can get the permission soon from Jared. So fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Best of luck there. That's very exciting. That's awesome. Really awesome. I'm going to ask the very, very basic question, and that I have to ask, which is, I consider Dune probably the greatest science fiction novel of all time. I have a number of books that I love, and I kind of consider H.G. Wells maybe the grandfather of science fiction, but Frank Herbert in one work, even even just the one standalone, for you have the whole series, but even just in the one standalone, I think it's just incredible. There's no word. So how fun was it to work on Dune? And is Dune a book that you've read a lot or at all, or something you did a lot of research for?
Well, it was a dream come true for me. So, I'm a big fan of Dune since I was a kid. Basically, I think I've read the original trilogy when I was about 12. I think 12 or 13 the first time, and yeah, it made a really big impact on me. Probably it was partially why I became like an illustrator.
Oh, wow.
So
wow.
And it's a funny story because that was back then, and then I play, of course, as a kid I played with Dune games and stuff and everything, and I completely immersed myself in that universe. And then I went into like high school and usual high school life. I forgot about the whole thing. And after I started working as a concept artist and illustrator, I actually I graduated from the Hungarian University of Art and Design and majored in illustration. And after that, I started to work as a concept artist and illustrator. And after a couple of years, I felt I need to learn a bit more. So an opportunity came up because I got a job in LA. So I decided to move to LA for that job, even if it was just a freelance gig, but a relatively long freelance gig. But this way, I managed to sort of go back to school in LA, specializing in concept art. And beside that, I was doing the work, and I could also meet with the clients there. And the funny thing was, in that school, what was called Concept Design Academy, we had basically a school assignment or homework assignment that we had to pick some sort of an already existing IP or story, and work on the environment designs for that. And then Dune came up. So why not work on Dune? And that's when I basically started to actually create illustrations just first as a school assignment,
Oh, wow.
and then just for myself to create depict different scenes and different characters, and just to try to visualize that insanely rich world what Herbert built in the books.
I
And yeah, and then I kept working on that, and the funny thing is, I got really great responses on my illustrations online. So I was just creating these for myself, and I think Imaginefix, the magazine, was covering mainly like digital art and that sort of topics. They released a book about Dune illustrations, and I got a fairly big portion in that book because they approached me to give them illustrations. And then a couple of years later, just basically Sandy Press approached me that they would like to work with me on the like special edition of the book, and that was an absolutely dream come true for me.
it's oh man, I can only imagine. I can only imagine. And I were you in your 20s, let's say when you started working on Dune again.
Uh,
Working on Dune for the first time.
yeah, that was when I was, let me think, yeah, late 20s or something.
The reason I bring that up is that I too read the book when I was probably 12, and it blew my mind, especially as at that point I was mostly writing shorts, and that level of excuse me, I have a rather large cat here who's trying to tear apart some of my paperbacks. Uh, um, at 12 it blew my mind. And again, like you said, the immersive, the world building there, I mean, still to this day, there's just nothing that's quite, it's not only so immersive, but it's just so different. It's just so different. You just
Yeah,
get this whole vibe. You're there. But then when I read it in my 20s, and then again, I picked up on so much more. I picked up on so much more because
yeah,
he has so much philosophy and just so much more to the characters' nuances, and
yeah,
then even
absolutely.
visually, it's yeah. Um, uh, no, I mean, that's now where could I get that Dune book where you had where you had a part, a bunch of illustrations in there for Dune?
Um,
Is that available? What's the title of that?
I'm
Because I'll hunt it down.
I'm not sure. It was published by Imaginefix,
Okay.
and I have to look it up.
All right. Yeah, no problem. No problem. But it's just for me, you know, uh, I had to ask. Um, let's see. Just looking at my notes here.
But yeah, it was definitely fun reading the book in different ages. So it gave, I mean, reading in late 20s, early 30s, and then reading it again when I started to illustrate the Sandy Press book. That, I mean, it's always, you always pick up different stuff, and more from the whole universe. And actually, what I really like about Dune is, it's, I mean, the world building is behind it is insane, but it's not. But that's not really in the focus of the whole books, but more like the personal journey of the characters.
Yes.
And that
Yes.
that's the thing. What is amazing, because I think a lot of the sci-fi books get into the rabbit hole of just uh, just iterating on the world building, and not focusing on the characters. And but Dune is totally different, because even if that insanely rich world is there behind the whole thing, but that's not the point, because
Yeah. No, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think
mm,
some of the greatest fiction works and history, and fiction's what I'm all about.
Yeah,
I love
absolutely.
nonfiction too. I love nonfiction, but just in terms of the greatest fiction, and I couldn't agree more. There's many books that are very interesting that come out, but you're right, they get caught up in that. They go down the rabbit hole, and they're describing a lot more of the cloth that the characters wearing than the character's journey. And it's really the,
Yeah.
if a great book is about the characters, the world, the world that, I have to bring that up because you just feel like you're there. And
Yeah, and the good thing is Dune leaves just enough for the reader's imagination and interpretation, and
it,
that's what's good about it.
it's perfect in that way. And that's to me is I don't want to talk much about myself, but that's just on the writing journey. What the biggest thing for me is trying to do something innovative that hasn't been done before. Have it be character based, and yes, leave a lot to the imagination. You don't have to. They don't all have to have a backstory immediately. You can, you let them grow, let them walk around. Stephen King always said, make the characters kind of birth them, and then let them walk around and do what they're going to do and go on their own journey.
Yeah.
And Dune,
Yeah, and actually that's why my job was really interesting, because my job as an illustrator, or at least that's what I felt, is my job was to fill out the gaps, what you couldn't really read in the books, and show what is not written down and not described in the books. So,
and which is
this was really fun.
I was going to say, that's got to be so much fun, and that's not easy to do. So, yeah, one of the things I jotted down here is that you really did capture the complexity of the characters, and that that's just and it's largely how I envisioned them. And again, it's kind of like, like I said, this has become like how I envision them now, which is just
that's really great to hear.
Yeah, it's it's oh man. Now somebody had asked a question about the movie, and so I wanted to ask you: have you seen Denis Villeneuve's film?
Yeah, I've seen it, and I know a lot of people who were working on that, on the art side, and it's and the funny thing is that it was partially filmed here in Hungary. So,
really? Oh, I didn't know.
So that's an interesting fact. I wasn't part of the movie in any way. Some designs, what I really like. Honestly, I imagined a much richer universe behind the whole thing. But I think it represents the mood of the books really well, and that's the main thing. So I'm really looking forward how they continue the story, because we just basically started the whole thing.
Yeah, it was a great ending point, but yeah, it's just the start of the beginning. And yeah, I agree with you very much. I enjoyed it. I feel like it captured the spirit of it, which I think in an adaptation, that they want to have it palatable for a large audience, but at the same time,
that's true.
I mean, look at all the inner monologue, and there's a lot of there's a lot of scenes they didn't do, and I'm like, well, if they did them, it'd be a 4-hour movie. No, I'm still hoping for a 4-hour cut where they put back in a lot of those scenes that that we didn't see. But no, I did greatly enjoy it. I think it captured the spirit of it, and and interestingly enough, I think now you mentioned you knew some of the illustrators and things on there, and concept artists. But you began your work years and years ago on doing the paintings for Centipede Press's Dune. How long?
Yeah, I think I started them like 5 years ago.
Wow.
Something.
Yeah. I mean, you can see, and I what's cool is, so for instance, the piece that you got permission to, the unpublished piece, you got permission to license to me to engrave in the case. I had no idea that wasn't a painting. Which is really, to me, that blows my mind, because usually I can tell between the, so but but the paintings that you have now, when I look closer at them, there is the piece for the engraving is perfect, because it's line art, which I can convey very, very well in an engraving in wood. It's just, I feel like I do a disservice if I'm trying to do a painting, because I can't capture what the magic you do in that. So this was, that was perfect. But your paintings are, when you oh man, when you see the look on Paul's face, as Paul and Lady Jessica are then looking at the city in ruins, Rakhine, and all the detail of the city itself, and then just the sand around it, and it's just like it's just magic. It's just magic. How long does it take to do? I mean, and I like I said, you started on it 5 years ago. To do one painting, I mean, I'm sure it varies, but I'm always
actually
curious.
I was all in all, I think I was done all paintings, the main illustrations, in about a year and a half. But I was working all of them parallel, beside my other works. And the funny thing is that usually I work digitally, because I work in concept art, and that's just more manageable in a production environment to work digitally. But for this one, because I felt this is a special thing, I really wanted to get out of my comfort zone. So I decided to do like a hybrid approach. So I started. All of them started with pencil sketches, and based on the pencil sketches, I then created like digital sort of mock-ups and block-ins for all the paintings. And after I finished those, the third phase was to actually hire models, and I did photo shooting for the characters in the poses what I blogged in.
Cool.
And based on the photo shoots, I went back and redid all the block-ins, and then I created color thumbnails with acrylics, what I scanned in, and with the color block-ins, or with the color thumbnails and the rough illustrations what I've created digitally, I started to basically merge them digitally and paint them. And I also used, like for the Baron, I created a 3D model, so I could actually pose them where I wanted to, because I couldn't like actually make a photo shoot with a person that obese, basically. And
he's a round fellow, yeah. Very
so
round.
yeah, so I used a bunch of different techniques, and I ended up with the final illustrations. But I always imagined to finishing them traditionally. So then I take those illustrations, and I printed them out in glissé prints on archival canvases, stretched canvases, and then I went in and finished all the paintings with oils, and then I basically hired a photographer, and we photographed all the paintings to be the final illustrations in the book.
Oh man, that's incredible.
Those are the interior pieces, and the original cover piece was a bit different, just with Paul. Yeah, that's the one. So the original one didn't have the sandworm on it.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we changed that during the process, and that was created digitally. And all the additional illustrations. So like the portraits and some of the double spread illustrations. Those were also created digitally later. So it's a bit of a mix.
And like I said, I mean, I would never. The digital art has come a long way. I have a good friend by the name of Fred Harper, and so Fred's he worked on Ghost Rider and a whole bunch of comics.
Mm.
He basically cut his teeth. He moved to New York City and he became one. He was working in parts as a caricature artist, and then became one of the best caricature artists around. And started getting a lot of work for that, a lot of work for Sports Illustrated, and covers like the Atlantic and that kind of thing. But the reason I say that is that what was really cool is we were sitting at my booth at New York Comic Con. Pre-COVID, so whenever that was, I don't know, 3 years ago. And he was showing me. He had his big tablet, and he was showing me. He's like, it's taking me a lot longer right now to do works digitally, but this is he was showing me some of the process of learning to, and he's like, look what you can do with this digital brush and this effect, and he's collecting brushes, and I'm looking at things side by side, and I'm like, this is just amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Because the digital art is just it's just
yeah, it came such a long way in the past like 10-15 years. So I remember when I started with digital art, there were no like tutorials online or anything on how to do things. First I didn't even know that you can use a tablet, so I started painting digitally with a mouse. I remember that was a nightmare, but
yeah.
so yeah.
I could only imagine. I can only imagine the difficulty. Oh man. Now Travis here, he said the Dune book that you had pieces in, he thought, he did some research. He said it might be called The Art and Soul of Dune.
Oh yeah, that should be the one. Yeah.
Cool, very cool. And Josh here, he said he tuned in and said, which I partially know the answer to, and I think you spoke to early on, but I don't, he may not have been on, but he said, did you choose what illustrations went into Centipede Press's Dune? And did Jared, choose some? And
no, basically I got completely free hand with the whole book from Jared. We just agreed on how roughly how many illustrations we would like to put in the book, and I think, I don't know how many times, but I read the book quite a few times, and I was making notes, and I also so I tried to like place the illustrations roughly evenly in the book, and I tried to pick the most iconic scenes from each like section, sort of. And that's how we came up a list of illustrations. I think I proposed 14 scenes, or 14 or 15 scenes, and then we narrowed it down to 10, what is actually in the book.
There's a lot of great fine press and small press illustrated books, and at least by the ones that and I don't get them all. I don't have a ton of them. But I have a good amount of them, and very few have 10 illustrations in there. So I was so excited. I had seen some of them that you'd posted online, but then to go through the book and see them, it's awesome. And you had the portraits too, which is like, here you have a great background into Dr. Yui, and just kind of something to fix in your mind as you're going through reading. Everybody here, by the way, is just saying, it's beautiful in person, or I can't wait to
thank
see
you.
it in person. So just so you know, there's a slew of people here that are also that are as happy with it, and I'm still excited every time I open it.
Yeah, actually, it's great to hear. I didn't get my copy yet,
Oh,
so
I was going to ask you that. Yeah. Oh man. Oh
so
man.
I haven't seen it in person yet, but I can't wait. I mean, especially after, because like as I said, we started to work on this like nearly 5 years ago in 2017, uh,
Wow.
and then I finished the illustrations, and we kept iterating on the book with Jared, and we made the portraits, and then we figured, oh, it would be cool to add the map as well too. So we redone the map, and what kind of illustrations can we include? And then also let's rework the cover. So it was a really long process, and I really can't wait to hold it in my hands finally.
Yeah. Oh man, it's got to be coming soon. Shipping's just we don't have to.
Yeah, actually, I think it's on the way. So I think Jared told me that he should my copy like last week or something. So I
Cool.
should I should get it soon.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, that's fantastic. That's I would imagine that's yeah. It's going to be very fulfilling to see that to hold that. So um uh let's see. All right, so now somebody asked me if you had plans to work on Dune Messiah, and again, if you can't speak to any of this at this point, please don't do so. I've gotten in
Uh,
trouble at times. I get advanced review copies, and then I'm trying not to speak to some things. But I didn't look into this, so they just asked this, and there may be another illustrator on it. I don't know.
yeah,
But
I think I'm pretty sure I can tell this, though I haven't told Richard about this, but basically uh, each of the books is going to be illustrated by a different illustrator,
okay, okay,
and all of the six books are going to come out, and each of them is going to be illustrated by a famous Dune illustrator who worked on previous Dune illustrations. I don't want to give out names because I'm not sure what I'm allowed to or whatnot. So I was basically the one who did the first book, and then each book is going to be illustrated in a similar fashion, but by another illustrator.
that's very cool. I know a lot of people are looking forward to all six books. I will say this: if someone hasn't read Dune, um, but you've seen the art and or the movie, or you've just heard good things, or for anyone that's going to potentially read Dune, I've always felt that you could read it as a standalone novel. It just has a
Oh
perfect
yeah, absolutely.
ending, and I'm so glad that you got to do the first book because, like I said, this is very much. I know I keep saying that, but it's just how I envision this. These characters, this world. So I'm really, really happy that you got to do the first book because it is by far my favorite of them,
Mm.
and like I said, for all that are like you could and it's like I know a lot of people have this they have this stack of 100 books to read, so I'm like, definitely read Dune like first, but if you do want to read the rest of the series, you could put them a little bit further down the list, but it is a perfect standalone in my
Yeah, I
humble
absolutely
opinion.
agree.
Very, yeah, cool, very cool. um what are I know you mentioned a number of projects that you've worked on. What are some of your other favorites? I mean, obviously this is seems to be up there for you, but what are some of your other favorites in any medium? You know,
Whoa, that's a tough question because I mean, it's really hard for me to pick favorites because I mean, I usually work on multiple projects at a time, and yeah, there are always like challenges and fun in every project. So it's really hard to pick an all-time favorite. I mean, Dune definitely was like a bucket list thing for me. So I really enjoyed that one. Uh, I don't know. I mean, the most recent ones, what I've worked on, it's a bit tricky because I mean, usually on the commercial projects, so on the production art projects, usually there is a like at least a 2 year long NDA. What so I'm
Oh yeah,
not
yeah,
really
yeah.
told out. Uh, but what came out recently is not the latest one, but the previous trailer for Magic the Gathering.
Very cool.
What I directed, that was a really fun piece to work on. So
Oh,
that's what I can say from recent times, probably.
that's awesome. That's and now uh have you done some of the cards? I should have done a little bit more research on that, but have you
I haven't. I Interestingly enough, I haven't done any Magic cards.
okay.
Back like about years ago, I was working on some illustrations for Dungeons and Dragons. So mostly like scenes and stuff.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. All right, something else I have to hunt down. Very cool. Um, yeah, and I'm not gonna pin you down to favorites. It's if you haven't if you can't tell already, when I'm talking about something that I'm passionate about, I tend to ramble, right? But I hope it's a fun ramble. I try to keep it fun.
Yeah. Actually, there's one other thing. What's gonna come out this year? I think in September or something. Uh, that's a new science fiction feature film. What's called Distant.
okay.
That was a really fun piece to work on. I just finished working on that just the before the COVID hit. Actually,
Oh wow, that's awesome. Very cool.
uh,
I know, yeah, like people ask me all the, what are your favorite books, or they don't ask me, and I just go out and I say it anyway, and I'm like, it's like an impossible question. Right now I'd say I have three favorite books. Right, my three favorite books are my first love, which was The Lord of the Rings, my second love, which was Dune, and then obviously that's fantasy and sci-fi, right? And I prefer to write sci-fi, so Dune is just, and I'm rereading it now. So again, it's just, and then the third one is The Gunslinger by Stephen King, which just
mm,
a mashup of really not horror, but more fantasy and elements, lots of elements of sci-fi and dystopian and all that. But then I have maybe a dozen second favorite books.
mm,
Like, yeah, you have Fahrenheit 451, you got 1984, I'm not going to go on and on, but it's just
mm.
impossible for me to, so that's why I don't want to pin you down. Um, are you familiar with
Well,
David Mack?
it's
Uh,
well I mean the tough thing with this question is I mean I told you I'm basically leading my own like design studio, and we worked on more than 30 projects last year,
oh wow.
and
Oh wow.
we finished like around 4,000 artworks. So that's why it's really hard to like pick one favorite, because
I
all
can
of them
see
are
that.
exciting, but in a different way. So
Yeah, sure, sure. No, I could see that. Oh man, that's a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot to be proud of. That's cool, man. Um, are you familiar with David Mack? David Mack's art.
no.
All right. Well, he's mostly done comic art, right? So
Mm,
but he has he has a style where he brings in a lot of collage into it. So
mm.
it's very, very different. So a
Oh,
lot of times,
his name sounds familiar, so I might know him.
a lot of
Yeah.
times he'll just do covers of big works, but he has
Mm,
written some Daredevil and then
right.
so the Daredevil Marvel series that just came out, there's a great character. She's Native American and she's deaf, which was two firsts in comic book history, and he invented her. He wrote her, and then she was like a part-time. She was working in acting part-time, and had another job full-time, and they were so impressed with her they gave her her own show, or so I hear. But anyway, the reason I bring up David Mack, one of the things that he said repeatedly that he's most proud of is that he worked on the credits and the overall title sequence for, in a lot of the pre-production kind of concept art for Captain America and the Winter
Mhm.
Soldier film. And I just found that so interesting, because he's worked on a lot of things, and he's like, I'm really proud of, which is, it's got to be such a fun hearing you, that you're working in the, with these movies and it's just got to be, a blast, because
Yeah,
again, it's
yeah.
a
Basically,
total
what
shift
I
of
really
gears for you.
enjoy, yeah, what I really enjoy in all these projects is basically our job starts like really really early on in the pre-production phase. So we usually work with together with the writers, directors, and production designers. Or sometimes sometimes we work on projects where there is no even director in the project yet,
Oh wow.
and our job is basically to establish the whole world and the whole visual world of projects, and that's always super exciting.
Oh man. Yeah, and that's got to be extremely early on, like the
Yeah, sometimes we even we come on as early as the pitch stage for a project. So sometimes we also develop like pitch packages together with the writers and producers when they pitch to big networks.
wow. Oh man, very cool, very cool. And yeah, I could, that's a very important part of the process for anybody that doesn't realize it. Many people are visual, right? And so you have to see, even
Oh
if it's
yeah,
just,
absolutely.
they have to see, this is kind of the look we're going for. It's especially in film as it's such a visual medium, that's vital. So yeah, no, that's wild, that's wild.
Mm.
I can't, I look forward to continuing to to just speak to you, and when those NDAs are lifted or the movie's coming out, just give me a heads up. I'll
Oh
be
yeah,
asking,
yeah,
I'm sure
definitely.
that'll be, that'll be a lot of fun. Let me see. Just looking over again some questions that I had. Uh, some of the Dune is character driven. Going back to Dune, it's character driven, and one of the cool things about the book, and I'm not going to spoil anything for the book, but you have characters like Duncan Idaho, who you get more of in the. They did put a good amount of him in the movie, but the movie adaptation, the recent movie adaptation, I should say, but there's good stuff with him in the book. Gurney Halleck, I just love. He's got a story and a song for everything, which is so cool. Do you have any favorite characters from the book? And that's another tough question to say, but for instance, I'm going to put this out there. One of my favorite characters is the is Duke Leto, and
Hmm.
it's just I do feel that he was there's a lot of emphasis on who influenced Paul
Hmm.
Atreides, but I don't think there's any question that the Duke Leto certainly did, and Paul's grandfather, of course, was another very interesting. Just a little bit that they put in gives you so
Hmm.
much, I think, of his personality, which then goes to Duke Leto. So yeah, again, I'll open up that if you have any, any ones that that stick with you.
Oh, I couldn't really pick one, to be honest.
I wouldn't like I wouldn't
Actually,
say Duke Leto is
I'm
my
really
favorite, but he really resonates with me. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm talking over you.
actually I'm really a big fan of the Bene Gesserit in general. If I can pick something,
Yeah, so yeah.
and just the whole idea of what they do and how they do it. That's just the whole idea is completely insane.
it,
for me,
it,
and mind blowing. So
you know, that's like a keystone, you know, to their universe,
yeah.
and yet they're so secretive, you know, in terms of, you know, it's yeah. They're really really cool. You know, the Lady Jessica being in there, and then, you know, and then of course the iconic scene with the Reverend Mother, you know, giving Paul a
Mm,
little test there. Yeah, it's just so terrifying, moving,
mm,
fulfilling in such a short space, you know, and that kind of thing always blows me away. You know, Ernest Hemingway wrote a short story called Hills Like White Elephants, and I think it's 2.5 pages long, and it's one of the most impactful stories I've ever read. And that's the kind of thing that happens in Dune throughout. You know, you get, you know, it's throughout the whole book. You know, I mean, you could have a long chapter, but I'm just saying on a page you could get so much about some of these characters and their influence, and then some of the you know, like, you know, the Bene Gesserit is what they're doing, what they're doing with what you see right in front of you, and then what they're doing behind the scenes
mm.
everywhere. And yeah, it's no, that's really cool. That's really cool. Uh, I love your depiction of the Baron, and it's so cool to hear that, you know, you 3D modeled him, because, you know, it's like how and depictions, I should say, because you have a couple of them, and you know, you have your kind of full frontal, and then you have him in front of the Emperor, and he's just sometimes the you have the beauty without, and the awful ugliness within, and he's just so horrible within, that it just, that obviously it comes out, and not just in him but in his whole family line. So you know, were there any particular, you know, there's a lot of little, there's some very specific things that's in the book about him, you know, in terms of his physical appearance, and then there are a lot of things in my mind left to the imagination. And again, you
Mm.
know, so you know, you did the 3D modeling, but you know, how did you go about kind of capturing the villain of villains, you know, one of just the worst, most awful humanoids in the history of fiction, or maybe nonfiction. You know, so you know, what was some of the you know, aside from the 3D modeling, what were some things you wanted to kind of hone in on, or that you felt were there, is there any element in those uh you know, portraits that you were like, this is going to really, you know, capture or allude to some of him? um
Yeah, I mean, I remember I was doing a lot of research about. I mean, it's hard to tell. I mean, I was collecting a bunch of portraits. What had the same resonance, sort of, that I imagined for the character, and based on those, I tried to create the sculpt, and a bit of a mishmash of those phases, and I mean, I but but they were like really unrelated references to the actual character. I mean, uh, I remember I was gathering like portraits of like murders and convicts, and but also
oh
picked some scenes out from the movie Seven about the obese character,
oh yeah,
just
sure.
to, yeah, just to understand uh, how his huge body would distort, and how would make it like make it appear like between alive and and half dead, or sort of, or half decaying already.
Wow.
So like
Yeah.
I gathered a bunch of like references, what sort of what were like the keywords or key calling words for me, and then I assembled the character from that.
That's wild. Absolutely wild. And not at all what I would have well, I don't know what I expected, but that's just not at all what I expected. I love the movie Seven, and now I could very much kind of picture what you're talking about, because it's just
It's basically just small references, and because that's basically how I start every project. I basically gather a bunch of references and uh, uh, from and I call this like sort of, it's like an associative reference gathering. So not so if I need a character like that, I don't necessarily like look up the barons who were depicted in the previous movies or previous illustrations, but more like I try to imagine the key personality traits of that character, and I try to gather references for those as from the real world, because
yeah.
I know that's just how my mind works.
Well,
Probably.
I think that shows too, because it just I think that really comes through quite well. That it's completely different. It's very realistic, but it's far removed from previous versions of the Baron. And obviously, there's been a few of those. And
Now the thing is with this one is because as humans we all resonate with the same things. We all got used to like and we all associate with different facial features with certain things, and I look for those key features when I try to create a fictional character.
I occasionally, since well, forever. I dabble in just some sketching on pencil. I continually go back to a number of books, and so you've talked about working off of some models and things, and obviously the Baron's not someone you just get to walk in off the street usually. But for anyone that doesn't realize, and some of I'm looking at some of the most basic books, and I'm a at this point I'm a terrible artist, but I spent all my time, most of my time writing, so if I it doesn't matter. But it's just there are things where you'll see they're just silhouettes, but they're showing you the realistic ways that humans move. And then when you go further to take a model, I know my buddy Fred gets live models all the time, and so he's like for him that just makes a big difference. And then it's great for we're walking down a corridor in Comic-Con where there's literally thousands of people, and he's not taking shots of the surroundings. He's taking shots of the back of people's heads, because he's like, look at how their hair is moving. I'm gonna put this in a queue, and so for
Yeah.
anyone that, I just wanted to kind of elaborate a little, because that's really key. And then of course the Baron had to have been extra challenging, so it's fascinating to hear your process on that. And then maybe one of the big things, kind of finish up with here. I don't want to take up too much of your time, and I know it's getting later by you, but the landscapes, man, oh man, the landscapes in your illustrations, they are epic. And again, when you have the characters there, sometimes they're not there. I love in particular, the end papers of the book. Like the first end paper, giant ship there. But Arrakis is just so, I don't know, it's just so different. So what how did you go about doing these grandiose landscapes and these vast stretches of ships and/or cities, cities burning. Also, obviously you can't model that one, but how did you go about that? Because it's again, it blows me away, especially when you see. Even when I see a little tiny Paul atop a sandworm, I know that that's Paul, and I know the position is right. And it's just then that tiny thing just makes it extra powerful, But you have this scene where
Yeah, I
Have it.
think it's probably I always start with blocking in the main composition elements. So I think uh, and that's always the key thing to come up with a powerful composition and just just because how you can create scale is basically the ratio of each element or
Okay.
how to balance out the compositions because you always watch something in relation to another thing and that's how you because my and I also played around with textures and in textures I mean just the textures of the sand and textures of the rock because that's also like sort of a key point for our mind because we all know how a sand dune looks or how a rock look and how based on the texture your mind instantly gets the scale of the actual thing and that's how I started to play around with I mean first of course the composition and then applying those texture elements to give the scale for the whole piece.
Wow. Oh man, that's very cool. Very cool. um, last question here is from Alan. Um, he asked if you approach sci-fi themes and fantasy themes differently style wise. So obviously you have to approach them differently, but style wise, do you go into it the same way, or you do you have a different process?
I mean, it always depends on the project. I think I have my sort of my own style in a way, but as a mainly as a production illustrator, I always have to adapt to the actual project and the actual world what I'm building. So for me, in terms of design, the key thing is to create a believable world, what is believable inside that fictional universe.
Very
Because I
cool.
think that's how the viewers are can can believe or can immerse themselves in that world.
Oh man, it's fantastic, fantastic. Um, yeah, I mean, I can't quite imagine, but it's really cool. It's really cool to hear this insight and
Yeah, but actually the design process is pretty similar. It doesn't really matter what the world or what the world or what the project is, but
is there anything before we sign off that you'd like to that you'd like to speak to? Anything that you want to
well,
plug or that people
no,
can
basically,
check
I
out?
actually have to head out, but I just wanted to thanks everyone for tuning in and thanks for having me here. It was really fun to talk about the books and the process and Dune itself. So it was great chatting with you.
It was great talking with you, Mark. Thank you so much for coming on. It's just been a pleasure, and all the best, man. Be well, and we'll certainly stay in touch. And but
Yeah,
thank you again
definitely.
for coming on. All right, great.
Thank you. All right, keep in touch.
All right, I will. Yeah, but you too, man. Be well.
All right, bye bye.
Bye, everybody.